So very good day to all of you listeners out there. We are back here today with Lyra.
Hello.
And Lyra, we've been talking about American politics for a while, and we have said we want to come back to some local scene, right? So I think one of the bigger developments recent time, of course, is the passing on of the, is he the longest serving chief minister in Sarawak?
Yes.
By a long stretch, right? And former governor Taib Mahmud. So, I mean, both of us are from Sarawak. Every time you talk about Taib Mahmud, it kind of elicits certain emotion from people.
It's a mixed feeling.
Mixed feeling, I don't know. Do you have a mixed feeling about his legacy and passing on? But to be fair, he hasn't been in a spotlight for quite a while, right?
Yeah, he has been very much staying under low profile.
Yeah, I guess the health, many years of rumor about his health, talking about he had stomach cancer and things like that. But you have to say that the last 10 years, quite low profile.
Yeah.
And so today, I think in this episode, we kind of just want to talk about his legacy in general, because so many of our episodes, we are talking about self-determination. We're talking about the rights to govern, and Sarawak seems to have that kind of independent-minded people. And how does it all fit with Taib today? And maybe I'll just start with one incident that kind of highlight, his influence or kind of his diminishing influence. And we're just talking about, of course, one of the most important events, 2010 Cebu by-election. And I always kind of compare that to 308 in Semenanjung. As in, it's kind of a point where you get people who are suddenly awakened politically. And I know a lot of people, young people, the millennial, I guess you're in the millennial, but some of those who are even younger than you, they kind of was inspired by 2010 by-election. But because I was working in Cebu at that time and just coming back from KL not too long ago, and I remember very distinctively that the whole election campaign of Barisan Nasional Sarawak totally excluded Taib Mahmud at that time.
I remember that as well.
And it's very significant because even then, by 2010, his relationship with his former supporter, and we're going to go back to the Ming Court affair a bit later, basically the Chinese politician, the Chinese base supported him in his fight. But by 2010, seems like there is not a lot of love anymore, would you say? And remember, all the federal minister came, and I think he made one very brief appearances. He had to, right? But basically, they are trying to hide him because the urban Chinese really hated him. So that's really, how I'm looking at the whole thing, that even from that time onwards, of course, so many years have passed, he has been out of limelight, and he kind of just faded very slowly, right? So what do you think about his legacy? He has such a long governing period. All the way from the 70s until now. I know we won't have time to cover, but maybe, where would you want to start with the former chief minister and governor?
Well, I think I also think about the Ming Court affairs as well.
Yeah.
I think because of the whole research that has been done on Ming Court affairs, that's when I sort of took notice of, actually what happened in Sarawak. Like, you have an overthrowing of one government because of another person's, that sort of desire to rise to power. So I think that was the first time that I really took notice of the former Sarawak governor. So I think that's really this whole thing. I wouldn't say there's a lot of great things to say about him. There's a lot of condolences messages that just talk about his legacy, how he was the one uniting the whole of Sarawak. But I felt like the foundation itself has already prepared for the unity that we have already been observing. Of course, obviously there is a lot of separation here and there, but obviously the separation of the Dayak and Chinese, especially from this incident, I think that's something that is really not talked much.
Very interesting you talk about the separation, because if we go back to 1963, when Of course, Sarawak was under Brooke for a long time, and I think you will agree that the Chinese, those who left China and come to South China Sea, they were really not interested in politics and local government. Most of them, they're just interested in finance. They're just interested in certain, maybe we can get enough to send back to our family. So I think most of them do not have the political aspiration because they don't even consider this to be their long-term place. So I think it's fair to say that up to World War II, the participation, the political participation was very low. Then, of course, you talk about the native in Sarawak. They, of course, have their own culture. They have their own hierarchy and history. But in terms of the Western style, the democracy that Malaysia has become, they were also not quite involved. So 1963, before, of course, Sarawak joined Malaysia, then they had their first election. And very interestingly, the result came out almost equal, the Chinese and the Dayak. So it's like these two have always are destined to be the key stakeholder for the state.
Yeah, I think in terms of Dayak and Dayak and Chinese being almost equal in the way that we vote, in the way that they display the power and even unity. I think it talks a lot on the mindset of like a communal mindset. Even, I mean, you would support like your own tribe, for instance. I think that has been very, very strong, unlike what you're seeing here in West Malaysia, because there were just so many choices to choose from. But over there, I think it's because of the way that we were brought up, the community, and the way that different clans were being brought from China, coming over across the sea and just come here and be based and at certain places by how the Brooke is arranging it. I think there has always been that sort of very strong tribal, communal sort of mentality that form how they were voting.
Yeah, I think it is still true today, right? And you see the voting blocks are yes, of course, race is always a factor, but more so, I think, in terms of the Chinese Dayak dynamic. Then, of course, in the midst of this 50-50 power struggle, all of a sudden you have the politics that is dominated by the Melanau, which is very interesting because before Taib, of course, his uncle, Yaakob, also Melanau, and they virtually ruled Sarawak for 50 years.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things you talk about, cause of it, since we're here, let's go there because it is one of the more interesting aspects. Now I was just rereading the whole history again. Then I realized, there are so many finer detail that we kind of miss, like how really the power of Dayak was diminished. But the thing about Dayak's power diminishing did not even begin at Mingkok. It actually began at the removal of Kalong Ninggang. So who was responsible? Of course, if you read history objectively, of course, you can't really read it objectively. But my objective reading, I would say, it is really the Pharaoh. It's really Abdul Rahman. Tunku Abdul Rahman who removed him because he wasn't playing. Because after Singapore left, remember what happened? Sabah Sarawak said, we also want to consider leaving. And it cannot be done. Then, of course, after that, somehow they put Yaakob there, and someone who is not from the majority power base of Dayak and Chinese managed to create a 50-year rule. That's something, right? And then, of course, by the time Mingkok's affair, just for our viewers and listeners, if you're not familiar with Mingkok's affair, it is, to summarize in 3 or 4 lines, it is basically when Abdul Rahman Yaakob, the former chief minister, he wanted to kind of step down, more like maybe he wanted to take a back seat, and he placed his nephew, Taib Mahmud, which is the subject of our discussion today, as chief minister, and then he became governor, hoping that he would still be able to control the whole affairs of the state. But lo and behold, he didn't realize that Taib will kind of like, I'm not going to listen to you, I'm the chief minister, and you are just a ceremonial position. That, of course, led to Yaakob coming out with a different party, try to challenge Taib. But what's interesting was that Yaakob decided to court the Dayak power, and then Taib decided to court the Chinese power. This is a very oversimplification, but that's the gist of it. So it's like, it's almost like, I don't know, I mean, when I read the history very recently again, it felt like the Dayak, maybe they felt like the removal of Kaloningkan was wrong and they wanted to be on the right side of history. And they felt like the right side of history will be with Yaakob. So, of course, I mean, it didn't. So that's why they have the secret meeting at Ming Court Hotel. Today is the Chorus Hotel. And, of course, then after the general election, there was retributions. And I think one of the factors, we are not going to talk too much on that, but one of the factors which allowed Taib Mahmud to win the whole struggle was the support of Mahathir. And that's one of the things we talk about, right? That yeah, I mean, in terms of their motivations, Taib seems to be more motivated by resources and wealth. I mean, by the way, you look at how he structured CMS, how he structured the business monopoly, how he used the Rolls Royce and things like that. I mean, Mahathir never quite display fondness for wealth, right?
No. I think Tun Mahathir would be more of what you see, like a lust for power. I think that would be more of his
It's
display.
like I can slap the royalty. I can remove the judiciary. You know, I can throw my opponent into ISA detention infinitely. So it seems like, you know, I can jail Anwar Ibrahim. I mean, he's still denied today, but I mean, anyone would know that it was his heavy hand, right? I mean, he managed to get the IGP to punch Anwar, and the chief police of the country have to go to jail himself for doing the dirty work of Mahathir. So I mean, that shows his Machiavellian control of power. But we type quite different. But would you agree they have some similar and familiar spirit, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, most definitely. I mean, it's although both are driven by different kind of desires, one for power, one for really like endless sort of wealth, I think both of them, they are still very much more similar than not. I would say the way that they rise to power, it's more similar than not. The way they did it was, I think they came from a humble beginning. So you sort of have the trust of the people, and people just keep on continuing to vote you in. I mean, we were just talking about whether or not it is the voters' fault for having vote over and over again for the same sort of government, and here you are complaining. But we were just also discussing about the fact that, I mean, because Taib Mahmud was someone who studied law. He changed the policy, he changed the law. I mean, very similar style like what Tun Mahathir did as well, in terms of how he was also changing a lot of the things. You sort of make certain illegal things lawful, and how the commoners are going to challenge this sort of person. I mean, so in that sense, they are more similar than not.
Yeah, we talk about, what is the extent of the responsibility of the voters, and I think we both agree it's complicated, right? It's not so straightforward. But of course, now I think people have more understanding already. I think when I was growing up, the typical person, as an educated person, if you go to high school, you go to college, you go to higher education, they will be able to say that, look, I think our chief minister is fairly corrupt. It's like even, I mean, talk about CMS, now Chaya Mata, the chief minister family, holding company with tons of listed company asset and things like that, used to monopoly construction industry, land industry, development. I think even those with a cursory understanding of how Sarawak development and politics work, they would just be able to say, look, we think he is very powerful, and definitely he had taken a lot for himself. But one of the things that when I first came back to work and just talking to people, in the legal community, and some are in government community, and one of the things that this person was saying, this person was kind of going into politics at that time. Also, in the legal arena, by the way, a lot of the politicians in Sarawak are actually lawyers and legal based, both the native and Chinese side. I mean, Tai himself is lawyer. I mean, you have many Barubi and all those Chong, almost all the top leaders are lawyers, right?
Yeah.
Especially in Sarawak. But then this guy said, look, what if the government, the state government can give you 100 million legally? Are you going to take the money? And I think from his understanding of how the system works, whatever they are doing, legal under the black letter of the law. But of course, it's like, you have the perspective of people like Sarawak Report and other people, and say, look, but you are taking from the people. But we kept saying, right, look, the people voted the same government. The government has the law. They control the state lawmaking body. They control the cabinet. They can have land policy to say, look, the state government can approve giving any land to any company. And that's what happened in Sarawak. There are a lot of land are given to $2 company owned by basically the cronies and families of chimney. I mean, this is common knowledge. You do a company's commission search, you can find the shareholder. They're not even hiding that. But what they are trying to say is, hey, everything is legal. We go through the ESCO, we go through the minute. It has not been challenged. If you don't like us, you should vote us out. It's like, of course, easier said than that. So that's really, I think, the last 50 years. We can't change history. But of course, when Taib stepped down, remember Adnan also Melanau, and now we have Abang Jo. Now we're kind of pivoting a bit away. Do you agree that Abang Jo and Adnan both maybe presented a different alternative as saying, look, we are moving away from strongman politics, and maybe we can make the whole thing fairer and less corrupt?
Well, I mean, the first thing that came into my mind would be the slogan by President Obama, change that we can all believe in. I mean, they do present...
Especially Adnan. Adnan managed to convince a lot of people that he is the S4S champion. And he kind of, I would say he fanned the fire of the independent spirit. I mean, rightfully or wrongfully, but that will be how I see it. So it's very, very similar to what you say, the Obama's change we can believe, but the
results are still the same. I mean, I'm just saying it's just a different way of presenting. It's almost like you knew that this sort of marketing didn't work, and you're gonna just change it to a different kind of packaging, and hopefully people are gonna just buy into this whole rabbit hole of lies again. So what I see is really that sort of, it's like the way I look at, I mean, the legacy of Taib Mahmud, even Adnan, then even now Abang Jo, it's almost like it's a family business. I mean, you can't run away from the grip of the Melanaus because of what has been done, because of the whole
Abang Jo is
foundation.
not really Melanau, right? I mean, he's like trying to... But what, okay, let's pivot a little bit again. Like what do you make of the term Melanau/Melayu?
Honestly, I think it's an utter BS, because those are two different ethnic groups that you're talking about.
I mean, you are also kind of partially related, Melanau,
Yes.
right? Your lineage, right? So, I mean, of course, it's for political shortcut, I say, especially Taib and Yaqub, because they became Muslim, and it's just easier to. But of course, there are Melanau who are still kind of like, I mean, they are. It's more like their traditional religion, right? They are not Muslim, they are not Christian, they are not one of the conventional religion, but they still kind of worship nature and animals and things like that. So, but it's just more convenient, right, for them to lump together. So that now Melanau/Melayu will be the third largest group after Dayak and Chinese.
Yeah, but it's really different. I mean, even the language itself is different. I mean, I've seen some of my dad's relatives that were just speaking in Melanau. I mean, I can understand zero. It's just so different. I mean, even the culture, the way they dress up, everything is just so different. So how can you say an apple is an orange? I don't think it's the right category. I mean, not just trying to be politically correct here. It's just different. So I think they are really merging it for the convenience the presentation to make it more appealing so that more Malays are going to vote for the same sort of government.
Yeah, so today, 23rd of February, I think Mariam Mokhtar, of course, she's not a Sarawakian, but she make interesting observation. And she say, look, this type basically represent Ketuangan Melanau. Would you agree?
I totally agree.
And of course, if we understand the company structure, you know, that there's some really big corporation. I mean, of course, the front are still Chinese, but basically they're Melanau company. And you know, Sarawak, no, we don't need to elaborate here. So it's like really, it's like a delivery system for cronyism, right?
And they leverage it very, very well because, I mean, like what I mentioned just now, I mean, the tribal sort of mindset. So they understood how Chinese work, they understood how the Melanaus work, and they basically just make it appealing to this group of people that it will be more accepting.
And Melanau, of course, has always had a reputation of being extremely business savvy. And I mean, within the state, and even, I mean, whoever has, even those in West Malaysia, if they have an opportunity to work with Melanau, they know that this group of people really have a different kind of mind, very, very sharp and very business savvy. So I think you get this uncle and nephew just dominated because they have such a political mind and they know how to play it. Now, of course, we talk about, every time we hear Taib Mahmud, we think about corruption, but is there any positive aspect to his legacy?
Well, I do think that he did. I mean, there is some sort of credit to him as well in terms of the unity that he has brought. Because, I mean, yes, unfortunately, with the diminishing power of the Dayaks, you see the unity of Melanau. It's a minority group that is being elevated to the next level. I mean, I think that sort of show that there is a way. I don't think he was displaying affirmative action, but it's more like he sort of just helped this group of people becoming more like savvier than not.
Talking about the Melanau, is it?
Yes.
Of course, he wanted to enrich his own tribe and family members also. And so that's the next thing that we are seeing, right? That there is really going to be a litigation among his family in terms of the wealth. Because now one of the very interesting things, of course, we talk about the fallout between the uncle and nephew, Min Court affair. Then, of course, Yaakob kind of lost the election and the subsequent... You know, Yaakob is a big... Kind of the analogy with the West Malaysian polity would be UMNO and Semangat 46. So Yaakob is like Semangat 46, very close. In fact, they just lost by a hair. But, you know, whoever is the government just has so much control. They control the police, they control the tax department, do this investigation. You know, some of the plotter, quote-unquote plotter of Min Court's affair were thrown into ISA detention and things like that. So there are many things they can do to weaken you. So eventually, like Semangat 46 have to merge back some of those rebellion, you know, from SNAP and PBDS, all absorbed back into BN, Sarawak. And I think this is really the political brilliance of Taib Mahmud. He continued to split the unity of the Dayak. So he kind of absorbed them into PBB. I mean, PBB is not even a Dayak party,
No.
you know, and then so many people, Alfred Jabu, all these people. And of course, Leo Mogi continued to be outside. But he is like, you know, I was just reading Leo Mogi and it seems like he is like he behaved more like a statesman, you know. It's like, you know, I'm from the Tuai Rumah lineage. And yeah, I mean, he's smart, he is respected, but he doesn't come across as having that political drive like his peers, like some of the leaders from SUPP, or of course nothing comparable to Yaakob Taib or Mahathir. So in a way, I think Taib's style is really, if I see a strong Iban, I see a strong Dayak, I'm going to remove them so that you become weaker and weaker. So here we are. Now, here's my, I guess, question for you to think. The Dayak is still the largest group in Sarawak. With Taib Mahmud there, now, of course, now the premier is Abanjo. Do you see a resurgence in the Dayak
Wow.
I mean, now we
I
have
mean-
Alexander Lingyi. So Lingyi had the reputation of always, quote unquote, causing trouble because the Dayak.
More outspoken.
Yeah, it's like we're being kind of oppressed. You took Kalong Ningkang away. You Chinese kind of plot together and cause our power to be diminished. I mean, we're talking in very broad strokes here. It's like you don't. I mean, very often you see in many nations, the politics, the minority are being oppressed, but it's very rare to see the majority. So that's the unique part about it. So do you feel like, I mean, especially, when I was just observing, especially the independence move among the native, and they kind of tap into this dissatisfaction to feel their passion for independence. So do you see maybe, I'm sure Abanjo will be aware of this because the Dayak are still the single largest people group.
Yeah, I think there definitely is some sort of dissatisfaction that I see, but whether or not it's sufficient to channel into a sizable grassroots movement, I think that is yet to be seen.
Yeah.
But hopefully, I think there is definitely that sort of seed that is waiting to be awakened in this hour.
So we talk about the appointment of the
seed of
speaker,
it.
right? Senate
Yeah.
speaker, and of course it's Lumbawan. And now we were talking about it, right?
Whether or not it's part of Dayak.
Yeah. Can you consider Lumbawan part of Dayak? I know a few Lumbawan, they say no. But the Malaysia Kini article say first Dayak to be appointed as Senate president. Because now Lumbawan very interesting because Lumbawan is, some people have said, and even those people who are from Lumbawan, they say it's more, the name is more linked with the locality, Pakalalang area. And some people also say the Lumbawan are cousins of Kayan. But Kayan are considered Dayak, definitely. And sometimes it's maybe they are the mountain people, and sometimes you use Orang Ulu. Then in the past, the Brook family called them Murut, but they never considered them Murut. So it's complicated, right? So yeah,
There's just so much ethnicity. I mean, even with the recognition of, the Bumi Putra, the group, what tribes are considered as Bumi Putra, I think that has been enlarged and redefined as well, right?
yeah, exactly. And also, like, you think about China and India, people kind of lump it, huge nation, but there are actually many, many nations there. They are not even the same. But because of forced unification in the past, they kind of lump them together, but there are actually many, many nations. So I think if we look from that point of view, but of course, I think if we talk about the indigenous original people, the Dayak, then without shadow of doubt, they are still the single largest in the whole Sarawak. So how do you see the whole thing? That of course, Taib's death, I think not really surprising because he has been out of picture for so long already. But how do you see Sarawak politics moving forward? And of course, I just want to, now before you comment, one of the point that the supporter of Chief Minister, the supporter of Barisan Nasional Sarawak in the past, now of course GPS, they always pointed to the fact, look, UMNO never came to Sarawak. We did not become like Sabah, which is basically the pariah state now. For lack of a better word, because you allow UMNO to come in and siphon everything out. So they always say, look, because of Yaakob, because of Taib, we avoided that fate. So what do you say to that, and how would you see the future development?
I do see that Taib Mahmud, from what I read, I think he did start off from a good perspective in terms of him wanting to champion the rights of the Melanau. Championing the rights of the minority group. And he was very, very successful in doing that. Obviously with our current premier, it's yet to be seen. He is also wanting to champion himself as the voice, the people of Sarawak. So he has a larger ambition, I would say, in terms of championing, I want to unify the whole of Sarawak, be it different kind of races. So, in terms of that, I do see that there is that sort of passing on of legacy from that generation to this generation. So I think on that point, I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing. But obviously this can be exploited to, you're talking about the oppression of the majority group here. So Well, I think Abang Jo is more charismatic in that sense, in terms of how he's like. I mean, well, I'm just reminded of the episode where we talk about him being asked by the Prime Minister to lecture.
I was asked to berkuliah. Yeah, that's the word you use.
Yeah, so I mean, on that note, I think he does see himself as one that is, well, we are being friendly with the federal, yet we are not overly friendly to the extent that we don't remember the people. I guess all this thing now that he's no longer living under the shadow of Taib Mahmud, it's yet to be tested. I mean, this whole thing is a whole uncharted territory altogether. So, I mean, obviously, I hope that he's gonna continue to do good for the state, and yeah, hopefully that's something to be manifested.
Yeah, and I think Abang Jo, when he first became the premier, remember the first state election, he was rather concerned because by then, remember, Taib's popularity was already dipping, but he did so well in that state election and subsequently. And I think it's really kind of parallel with the fall and losing power of UMNO and federal level Barisan Nasional, because that suddenly allowed Adnan first to do what he wants to do, which is basically say, hey, we have a self-determination and autonomy in Sarawak. So I think Abang Jo kind of took it another step forward, with language autonomy and certain things. Now they're talking about healthcare, now they're talking about education. Actually, I don't really mind that because
airlines as well.
Yeah. I mean, they want their own airline. They were rumored that they wanted to buy my airline, and I don't know if you have been following there's one petroleum contractor, Sebah Dynamic. So Sebah Dynamic, of course, when was fined and sued by Security Commission, they sue back, now wound up. And after wound up, the liquidator say we are putting a tender for someone to take over the listing. So that means so I actually have very, very credible source. Basically someone inside the company saying that the liquidator refused, because when you wound out a company, basically you are not supposed to continue the business. Yep. You're supposed to liquidate all the assets. That's 99% of liquidation. However, the liquidator can, under certain special circumstances, say, we insist the company continue to be going concern. And so that is what he was doing. And many people felt like there is political push behind it. And because, some are saying that, okay, maybe all the contract given to Sebah Dynamic, we can form a new company and hand it over. But the company giving the contract is Petronas. And Petronas cannot be seen as moving from... this is considered siphoning. And even Petronas is not stupid enough to do that. So now why I mention all these things is you start to see that with Abang Jo, he wants to... And even with Sarawak Petrol and things like that, he really wants to create an alternative path. And even with COVID, remember we always talk about the Sarawak, what do they call
SDMC.
it? SDMC. I suddenly cannot remember the name. And they wanted to do things differently. Initially I was very apprehensive of the whole thing, but now as I think about it, I think it's not a bad thing. Let's decentralize further, and in the process, maybe we'll come into difficult times and things like that. And in fact, do you realize that the land matter is actually under state jurisdiction? And if you do a lot of conveyancing across different states in Malaya, they all have different SOP, different requirement, different documentation, the same national land code, different interpretation. So it's not a bad thing, right?
No, it's not.
Because one of the things we kept saying is that if we can reduce more federal power, yes, we may go into a season of chaos. And in a way, Anwar Ibrahim's administration already seen a bit of chaos because he doesn't have the power of strongman. Imagine if PH had, 140 seats, 150 seats, then they will be ruling with iron fist, and maybe we get a lot of progressive. I don't know. I'm not sure that's a good thing. But when you are forced to work with UMNO and GPS, GRS, well, it's harder and people are a bit impatient, but maybe in the long run it's better.
Yeah, I don't see it as a compromise necessarily.
Yeah. So the other thing I want to talk about type is really, and maybe not so much type, is Adnan. And one of the few good things, of course, Sarawak for the longest time, the majority of property, land are leasehold. And there's a whole issue about when the lease runs out, what happened?
What's the premium?
Yeah, do you know in Singapore, for example, if the leasehold runs out, the government say, that's it.
They just take down the whole HDB, right? Do they?
Yeah, they say your lease is gone. And of course, this create a lot of hoo-ha and things like that. And we're kind of diverging a bit. But Singapore's government's rationale, okay, is somewhat logical. They're saying that, look, if we give you perpetual, if we renew the lease, then you become the holder for the next 60 or 99 years, whatever. And nobody wants to improve the area. Then you have the whole ghetto. So this is what is happening in Hong Kong, for example. The lease was renewed, but nobody wants to improve it. Nobody wants to spend money on common property. So they say, okay, I want a white knight to come. I want the developer to come. And they want some value. So Singapore look at that and don't want the same housing issue and they say, look, if you're a citizen and you meet the qualification, at some point you'll be qualified to buy a HDB asset anyway. So they're saying that within your lifetime, you can get one asset minimum. But when it expires, sorry, we're not going to renew it for your next generation. Now, coming back to what Adnan did was, of course, that was one of the longest running issue in urban, especially among the Chinese community. What happens? And initially, there was I think when I first started to work, they start to calculate premium. In West Malaysia, they really count the premium. And can you imagine if you are native, maybe you have some inheritance, 200 agricultural title. If every title you have to pay premium for the value, that's it. They say you must, some of the native people are like, then you must well just take the property. So I think what Adnan did was to put a flat fee for all the premium. So it's like terrace house, I think 600, semi-D 800. I know because I wanted to renew my detached unit. I think it's only 1,000. It's like unbelievably cheap. So I would say this is one of the biggest talking points for DAP that has been taken away. Of course, it's political points, but it also helped the people. So we do want to give some credit to the administration. And the issue started with Type's administration, but Adnan finally did it. So that's some of the good things. Of course, we talk about another thing, which is, we talk about Sarawak rights, right? Do you know in the past, Sarawak rights only passed from father to child? But now, mother to child. So now your children will have Sarawak rights. And that's because of an amendment made by, I think, Adnan's time, a few years ago. So these are some good things, I guess. Some of Type's legacy, I guess. Of course, we already talked about the corruption and things like that. So any other kind of lasting thoughts, last final comment you want to talk about?
Yeah, maybe we could talk about what Barubian wrote.
Oh, yeah. You talk about the condolence message. Okay. Yeah, you want to read that one?
So he wrote this, and I quote, "We have lost a formidable figure with the demise of our former governor and chief minister Tun Taib, whose life was a tapestry of impressive political mind, notable achievements, and significant controversies." So despite our long-standing and often diverse political opinions and rivalry, I respected his political mind and the energy he brought to our debates.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is where, we're not going to talk about the rest of it, but this portion itself, I think he wrote one of the best condolences message.
Indeed. And to me, why this is good is because he can respect the person, but does not need to agree with his policies and action. And I think, remember in West Malaysia, they have this, the opposing politician, they have this slogan, right? Lawan tetap lawan, right? And it's like, we will fight, and at the end of it, we shouldn't go personal. And I think that's, and remember when Trump won in 2016, and why he called Hillary crooked Hillary, right? Because or the server email controversy. So he's like, oh, first day he said, I'm not going to investigate or charge because otherwise you'll be seen as a political retribution. But it's so ironic that the other side is using that full illegal lawfare against him. So, yeah, I mean, Baru Bien really, he's like, yeah, I can respect your energy, I can respect your passion, but I don't need to agree with a single thing you do because politically we're at, Baru Bien is native customary rights, native title activist. He surely he won't agree with a lot of the policies of Taib and Yakut's administration.
But that just shows the maturity of the politician that we are looking at in Malaysia. Because, I mean, obviously we have a lot of more progressive whereby sometimes you will just be bashing them left, right and center out of self-righteousness. But what he demonstrated was really like, this is my contemporary and I'm going to respect you for the work that you have displayed, however path that you choose to live. And that's really what we are talking about in this show. I mean, everyone has the right to pursue the sort of freedom that they want to have.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting because one of the things about the modern politic, and especially when it has been, I mean, we talk about the wokeness and how really it has been hijacked by Marxism, and Marxism, remember, it goes back to French Revolution, it goes back to Soviet Union. Their modus operandi is to eliminate competition. They don't even want competition. Stalin is the one who say, I don't need to have more votes. I just need to control the one who counts the votes. So that's really what is happening more and more. But you can see with Baru Bien, and I was just thinking about the Minkos affair. One of the guy, the snap president at that time, I think what's his name already? James Wong. James Wong was, I think he was under ISA for 3 or 4 years. And I mean, if you're in that one, you could be so bitter and things like that. But later he kind of reconciled with Taib. He even become a federal minister after that. It's like, wow, it's like there's no permanent enemy. And when we're retired, we're not going to have retribution and things like that, which is such a contrast to someone like Tun Mahathir. They continue to, like when we talk about the first Pakatan Harapan administration, it's really his bitterness, and it's like he couldn't bring himself to honor the deal to make Anwar Ibrahim prime minister for the second half of the administration. I think he just couldn't emotionally do that, and that's why he decided to sabo. It feels like that with retrospect analysis, right? Yeah, so it's very interesting, and I know we can talk so much about Taib, but I think kind of time is up already for today. So yeah, I think in future episode we'll come back to Malaysia, Sarawak. But we just thought, hey, we have a lot of listeners from Sarawak, and maybe we just want to kind of chat about the white hair
Raja.
Yeah, as our final kind of, I guess, respect to him. So until next time, bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.